So, what systematic racism really is? Coming right up. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Common Sense Logical Reason. As always, I want to say thank y'all for joining me today. So, I think everybody on the planet has heard the expression systematic racism. I mean, you have to literally be living under that rock, said rock, to not have heard this expression, to have heard this cry coming from black people in the United States of America. Something that black folks are always, being victims and always focused on victimhood, always cries of oppression of blacks in America, and supposedly this alleged white dominant, these whites are dominating the planet, and various other foolishness and nonsense. But is systematic racism really truly a thing? Well, in order to do so, you have to, answer that question. You have to define what systematic racism is. So I went to Google, which Google tends to represent more Webster, because Webster is more of a meaning or explanation today. They've constantly revised meanings to update to what it means today, whereas as opposed to Old English, which basically tends to be old meanings, what the word really truly means. But I'm talking about today. So I basically went to Google, and according to Google's AI, systematic racism is a complex interplay of practices, policies, and beliefs deeply embedded in society's system that perpetuates and reinforces racial inequalities. Unlike individual or overt racism, systematic racism operates structurally and is often unconsciously creating disadvantages for people of color across various facets of society. Of course, they use different key areas such as housing, wealth, criminal justice, education, healthcare, and employment. Again, this goes right along with the nonsense notion of structural racism, that racism is something that's structural, and specifically here in America. But what racism truly is, if you actually analyze the practices of the people who cries about systematic racism, most notably blacks and these apologetic whites, systematic racism really truly is basically finding any disparity in society in which black people are lagging behind whites, and then it assume it's because of racism with no real evidence or that racism really is the issue or the problem or the cause. Now that's my definition. Again, that's my definition of what I've seen based off of observing blacks constantly crying about systematic racism and all the evidences that they use. Again, it's all about an assumed disparity. They find these disparities in these key areas, and then they say it is racism, assume it's racism. They never provide any evidence that any of the racism, right? Housing. They don't provide you any evidence that black folks are being discriminated from, again, buying housing. This is them running back to the past. Now the Fair Housing Act was created to create fair housing for everybody. So you can't cry about no housing. There's no black person in America who's denied a housing if they can afford it. Same thing with wealth. Nobody is denying black people's ability to earn wealth. There's no black person in America who's capped out at a certain wealth. If you want to earn wealth, you got to go out there and do the things it takes to earn it. And unfortunately, black people do less of what it takes to earn wealth. Criminal justice, same thing. They cry about mass incarceration, how black folks are disproportionately incarcerated and disproportionately treated in the justice system, but they always ignore the fact that black folks commit mass crime. If you don't commit mass crime, there would be no mass incarceration. There would be no mass interaction between black folks and the justice system. Again, they deflect and want to focus on, like I said, they find ways to make it about racism. Right? Then we go to education. Who's denying black folks education in America? Nobody. There's no black person in America who's denied education. There's no university that a black person cannot enroll in and go to because they're black. And if they often talked about, you know, black people in the inner city, they lack resources, and because of taxes or property taxes, well, then black people should pay more property taxes. If the black folks are the people living in the community, then they're the fault, a reason why the area is not receiving property taxes, or buy property and pay more damn taxes. They talk about health care. There's no black person in America is denied health care. Once again, if you're doing less of what it takes to have the resources, then you're going to have less resources to invest in education or health care. So it's not that black folks are denied health care, it's that black folks do less of what it takes to earn wealth, and they have less wealth to be able to invest in these areas. Also, black people have less, because they do less of what it takes to earn wealth, have less money to be able to eat healthy. They tend to eat less healthy and are more overweight. Black folks on average tend to be dependent upon government and dependent upon the government to take care of them. Again, that's the mindset that is created when you living off the government all your life. And then employment. Again, what job, income, lifestyle, career path is off limits to black folks for being black? None. There's no job that a black person can get for being black. You have to be competent, and that's again that same mentality that causes black folks not to go out there and earn wealth, like at the same rate as other races of people, such as white people and Asian people and people who moved to this country from India who are also Asian. If like I say, if you do less of what it takes, you're not going to be as employed. So none of these key areas are the evidence that there's systematic racism that's stopping black people from getting anything. It's all based off of disparity. That's all it is. It's nothing but a disparity, and them assuming that the disparity is racism. And again, this is part of the black brainwashing. You know, I say all the time, I talk about the big lie narrative. If you tell the lie big enough, long enough, and loud enough, eventually people will accept the lie as true. And the average black person in America, from the time that they're born, the average FBA, from the time that they're born to the time that they turn 18 and become an adult, they have been so indoctrinated and brainwashed into white supremacy, racism, we vote for Democrats, and so on and so forth. And by the time they turn 18, they've been told a lie big enough and long enough and loud enough about racism that they believe that there's institutional racism and structural racism and every other type of racism in America, but they don't have any evidence to back it up. So all they have is a whole bunch of assumptions and trying to craft information to being racism. You know, they start from the standpoint of America is racism and systematic racism, and then they reverse and craft and try to reverse the information to make it appear to be that way. Another saying is that, you know, old saying is, well, what we believe we perceive, and what we perceive we experience. If you believe that America is a racist country, you're going to perceive everything as racism. And if you perceive that everything is racism, you're going to experience racism in everything, and that pretty much explains black people. Pretty much explains everything. You look at black victimhood in America today, and that pretty much sums up what systematic racism really truly is. Again, it's nonsense made up in their head. There's no system holding black people back. There's no law stopping black people. It's black people's behavior, and black people's behavior caused black folks to lag behind in areas, and they because of that disparity, because they assume that the disparity is because of racism, and then they try to make it equal to racism with reverse engineered data. Anyway, y'all, that's my 2 cents on this. That's really truly what systematic racism is. It is not no system that's really truly holding black people back. It's people assuming that disparities are racism. And as always, y'all, until next time.